Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Find a Way podcast with Dusty. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Hopefully, you're doing well on your journey. This next episode is a response to a broadcast channel question about a future topic. I got two responses that kind of go in hand, which is potentially losing yourself during the weight loss process or after, and then your identity. In this journey, discovering your identity, discovering who you are. And, this is so close to me because of how much things changed over the course of losing 300 pounds. And, mind you, I've spent my entire life, up until 33 years old, always being the big guy, always being the, as they said it in fifth grade? I think it was fifth grade, you're the fattest kid in school. It's just something that I always carried with me. It was that shame, it was that understanding that folks were looking at me whenever I walked into a room. My instances were, I went to Subway, and a little girl pulls on her mom's shirt and says, "Mom, well, look, Mom, look, wow, he's big." And then going to another Subway, I just had bad experiences with Subways. Going to another Subway, and I actually put a picture on my debit card, and it was of my wedding. I remember giving it over to the cashier to purchase, lunch or whatever. And the cashier looks at the card and looks at me and goes, "Man, you let yourself go." And so it was that constant understanding for someone like me that wherever I go, whatever I do, I'm always going to be that big guy. I'm always going to be the fattest guy in the room. And so I've carried that identity. I've carried that as kind of who I am on a day-to-day basis. And in the process of losing 300 pounds, that went away. I remember walking specifically at Disneyland, and I was getting off of Space Mountain. It was one of the first times I could ride Space Mountain because I had never been able to fit. And I had ridden Space Mountain, and I'd gotten off, and if you know Disneyland in California, you get off in this underground area. It's where they typically offer you the pictures, and then there's almost this tunnel that you end up going back over to Tomorrowland. Well, I'm underneath this tunnel, and it's a very busy day. You can see hundreds of people all around. And I remember just standing in the middle waiting for another group that we were with to get off. And there were people passing, going to and fro, up and down. And I don't know if it just hit me at that moment or if it was maybe the culmination of the process of the journey, but all of a sudden, in a moment, I see hundreds of people walking past me every which way, and I'm not catching their attention. I'm not the fattest guy in the room. I'm not looking like, oh, who is? At times I would, full transparency, like, am I the biggest guy here? I always had that identity that came with me. I always had that, this is a part of who I am. And in that moment, I was like, I'm not that. And I go into this quite a bit in my book as far as some assumptions and some acceptances that I had made early on in my journey and how those had to completely transform. Now, how do I convey this in a way that is understandable and relatable? Because I can't take the next 4 or 5 minutes and fully encompass the identity change, the transformation. It's almost like I can't do it justice by just recapping it, because you're not going to get it. The one thing I'll say is you're going to go, especially because you're changing and you're different, you're going to go through some obstacles and some difficulties with current relationships potentially, because how you perceive yourself and how you perceive the world will completely alter and change when you get to your goal weight. And that's if you lose a significant amount of weight. I would dare say over 50, more than likely over 100 pounds, anything over that, that's where you're really going through that change. And so if you, and here's a good example, and hopefully this is kind of relatable. If you get into a relationship with someone, and you got into that relationship, yes, because you were, say, interested, but you really kind of stuck around through the red flags, or you stuck around through situations that you typically wouldn't stick around for, because of how you valued yourself, you stuck around because in your mind, that's the best that you can do. That's the best that you can get. And so you settle, you compromise, and you kind of just take what you can get. So when you lose the weight and you get to your goal weight and you go through that process, all of a sudden now, there isn't so much this, I just got to settle for whatever I can get, to, no, I discovered myself a little bit more. I discovered my wants. I see what I truly want. And this is maybe not what I want. And so you see actually in the, specifically in, I don't know too much about others, but specifically in the bariatric community, there's a lot of individuals that get the surgery, go through a massive amount of weight loss, and end up either getting out of the relationship that they're in, or getting a divorce, because even the person that is with the person that's lost weight has maybe they've got insecurities themselves, and so they see the insecurity in the other person, and so they're willing to say, it's, I'm going to get into this because that person would never leave. It's almost like you see the insecurity from the other person, and so you use it as a safeguard that person would never leave, and so you're genuinely in that relationship just complimenting your insecurities. Well, what if someone becomes a little bit more secure? I think me in this podcast, I've got to present a reality that can prepare you mentally, because if you're not prepared, I wasn't prepared for the ups and downs for 30 plus years. That's why I quit. That's why I threw in the towel so many times and I wasn't successful on the journey, because I wasn't mentally prepared. So going through the identity crisis, going through the potentially losing yourself and who you've built up, you've got to know that you moving towards a more secure version of yourself is better for you, and sometimes isn't better for others. And you have to be okay with that. You actually have to be okay, and you have to, honestly, I would push to do that. And it's like, you may hurt people. It's not that you're willingly hurting people, but you can't compromise who you are now that you are a little bit more secure because somebody else, say, isn't. Like, you're almost lessening yourself to appease someone else. And we always have to, no matter what, always have to do what's best for us. We have to do, and I don't say that in a selfish way, but how are you expected to care for others? How are you expected to live your best life in loving someone else if you don't love yourself? Like, you can only give, what you know or what you get. I mean, it's, again, the 3 to 4 minutes of trying to summarize this is going to be difficult, but when I say you've got to do you, or you've got to do what's right by you, is the life that is much compromised, the life that is much appeased to others, that is living for others, and diminishes you and diminishes your, let's say, not rights, but like, you have an obligation with the one life that you live to live it to the fullest and to live it to the best of your ability. And living your best life is being secure in yourself, knowing who you are and loving yourself. And you can love yourself at whatever weight. It's not to say, oh, at your goal weight according to the doctor, that means you can officially start loving yourself. No. You've got to love yourself. And a lot of us are wrapped up in the weight or how it looks in the mirror, what the scale says, and then that will determine the value that we carry. And that's where I've got a little bit of a pushback. You got to love yourself no matter what. You can't shame the old you. You know, the 350-pound, the 500-pound Dusty. I can't shame or look down on that person at all. I'm grateful that he did most of the work. You know, 500-pound Dusty is the one that did the work. You know, 220-pound Dusty is here because he put in the work. I'm not going to shame the old me. I'm proud of the old me. But I do know that the old me was very insecure, was constantly in a situation where I was being pointed at, laughed at, looked at, gawked at. And I didn't want that. I wanted to disappear. I didn't want to be the center of attention when I walked into a room. I just wanted to be like everyone else. And so my process of getting there also meant that I became a lot more secure in who I was. I became a lot more comfortable in my own skin. And that, in turn, meant a lot of friendships, a lot of interactions that I had with people had to change. I had folks that, because they saw me as, not literally less of a person, but because of my insecurity, it's almost like they got a hero complex and they felt good about themselves for being friends with someone that is unconsciously, that, and they're not like, hey, yeah, they're less than me, so I'm gonna. No, and this happens subconsciously. It's this hero complex that folks have that, you know, no one's gonna hang out with this person, so I'm gonna hang out with this person. It's like all of a sudden now that dynamic is completely different and changed because you're no longer the insecure person that this hero needs to come and do. No, it's just not the case. You're secure now. You know who you are. And so relationships will be lost. Friendships will be changed. Things that you grew accustomed to knowing and understanding are going to be completely flipped on itself. But here's the hope and the promise at the end of it. The feeling, the relief, the unspeakable will be completely worth it in the end. The lack of mental stress is something that I can't convey enough, that is something so beneficial to everything that's taken place. When I walk into a room and I look, and that chair that I'm about to sit down on, is it secure enough or is it going to fall because it's broken before? I've broken 3 or 4 chairs in the past. I've broken a church pew in the past. I've broken these things. And so immediately I've got this insecurity that when I walk into a room, something's going to happen. I'm going to bring attention to myself when I want to, again, disappear. And so the problem of always having the attention of others, I want to disappear. Well, I disappear a lot. I'm not the center of attention when I walk into a room. I'm a blur now. It's what I've always wanted. So the things that you don't know that you're going to love are going to happen when you become more secure. If you are not somebody that sticks out, like myself, 534 pounds, being top heavy, I stuck out. Now I don't stick out. It's unspeakable because I didn't know until later that I would constantly be like, you don't know what you're overthinking unless you're removed from the situation of overthinking it and then reflecting back on it. Almost having folks speak into your life on what you're overthinking and talking about what you're overthinking and then realizing like, wow, yeah, I did do that. Yeah, wow, yeah, it was like that. I mean, that alone, having the confidence to walk into a room, to hold a conversation, insecurity can carry itself not in just how you act and how you carry yourself, but also in how you talk. That someone can very easily one up or have this elevated conversation that they are superior to you. It just dynamics, conversations. There were opportunities at work for me that didn't open up. Very similar opportunities, they started opening up when I lost weight. It could be how I carried myself, but also could have been how people viewed me. You're not just seeing a mental relief, not just seeing a mental, oh, that feels better, but financially you might make a benefit. Relationships, you might be able to spend. See, that's I go into relationships. A lot of folks will start wanting to hang out with you or spend time with you as you go through the journey of losing weight. You become almost someone that is manageable to be around. And for me, it's like, well, you want to hang out with me then? Well, I'm not going to go out of my way now. Like, we know deep down, we know subconsciously how you feel. That's why finding those true friends that are with you from the beginning through the middle, and when you get to your goal and you go through that and they're still with you, those are gems. Those are real gem individuals. And yeah, you stick close to those because those are true, genuine folks. But that identity change, that losing of yourself along the way, I don't think there's ever a concern of losing yourself because ultimately you're with yourself on a day-to-day basis. You're talking to yourself. Your mind is having that conversation. I think telling yourself it's going to be fine and where I go and where I get to is going to be better for me. And if you know something's going to be better, then what you're going through is going to be worth it. Like, you think about pregnancy. A mother goes through so much in the 9 months. The moment of actually giving birth, the taxation on the body, the work that a woman has to do to give birth is remarkable. But the end is what? Bringing a life into this world. Having a child, having someone that you can love. Just the beauty of having children and having your legacy, your family continue and grow. It's a beautiful thing. So the end result is so good that the start and in between, and even the toughest moments, be worth it. So transition that thinking over to what you're going through in your weight loss journey and you losing weight. It's going to be worth it because you're giving birth to a new you that maybe the world has never seen before. But that new you is life. That new you is a breath of fresh air. And there may be some that leave and toss you to the wayside. And that's okay. Everything happens for a reason. We may not see the reason initially, but everything happens for a reason. And if folks leave, they leave. You want to surround yourself with those that can propel you forward, that can challenge you, that can make you better and develop. When you think about your existence on earth as a human being, it's to develop, it's to grow, it's not to just get old, but it's to obtain, it's to understand, it's to explore, it's to pass on. And if you're not able to do those things with individuals in your life, current situations in your life, then you've got to be able to move on from it. You have to. It's for the betterance of you. And a better you is better for those around you that end up sticking around. You think about the folks that I called gems earlier, the ones that stick around, that were truly good friends all throughout the process. They deserve the best version of you. That you need to be there for them as much as they are for you. And so being the best version of yourself will help accomplish that. So don't worry about, so easy to Sounds like that saying, don't worry about it. Just a simple dismissive, but I hope what I'm saying and what I've said goes into that. Don't worry about losing yourself. Don't worry about not having an identity. Because the person that you're becoming is a better version, because you're challenging what you would have accepted before. You would have accepted, compromised, and diminished the value of what you want before because you associate it with maybe how you feel, how you look, whatever number you saw on the scale. But as you're moving closer to your goal, you're moving closer to challenging those things now. And it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable to challenge the things that you've always accepted, but there's something good at the end of it. You're giving birth to something pretty amazing. And be patient along the way. Be graceful for yourself. Always advocate of journal, writing down, reflecting, taking as many moments as you can to really kind of process and take the lines out, like that old rotary phone, take the line out, put it somewhere else, like untangle the wires. You can't just snap your finger and untangle the wires. It can't happen like that, but you can give yourself grace that if you pull out one, it's tangled. Got to be patient, untangle it, put it back in. That one untanglement will untangle others, and that's just that whole process, that whole system. It's a beautiful thing. You just got to go through it. So, I'll say 8 years in that there's still discovery. There's still things that I'm, working on and hoping for, but the people that are around me that have supported me since day one and that have loved me since day one have been patient with me, but also I've been working to be better versions for them. Especially my kids who weren't around when I started my journey. I got to be the best version of myself. I got to be as secure as I can in myself so that way I can pass that on to them, because they're going to be I wouldn't say the greatest judge of character, but they'll be probably the strongest, is it a truther? They'll see how things really are and not what you project them to be. Hopefully that makes sense. You can show up and smile at a party and say, hey, these are my kids, and if you beat your children, it's not a laughing matter, but they're going to see right through what you present yourself to be and what you say, and then what it really is. So that's why it's important to be secure, get secure, become the best version of yourself, because if you have kids, they're going to see it. Unfiltered, they're going to see it. So, well, thanks for tuning into this episode, about 23 minutes. Hopefully it conveyed some sort of hope and encouragement on your journey. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Take care.